Okay, ktm950 redundant fuel pumps, running the vacuum pump located there and the stock original pump as a spare. So here is how it's plumbed in. It's a little bit messy with all the hoses everywhere. I hope someday replace them with hard lines. Here's the crossover tube. Here's the intake for the fuel. It goes down here to a crossover to a T. The fuel goes into the intake of the electric pump, then flows back up this hose up, and because there's extremely tight restrictions on space on this bike, you wouldn't think so, goes all the way across the other side of the engine, pops out over here, runs down to a glass and field serviceable fuel filter. It's right there. I usually keep this zipped up here so it doesn't cling around, and you can open that pretty easy just with a crescent wrench and a couple screwdrivers. So that fuel line loops all the way around up here, goes around into the intake of the pump. Outside of the pump, down this other side, and it does fit. Loops around again, goes to this little T, which I have right here, a little fitting which is very helpful if you're filling up a buddy's bike. I got a little piece of hose that screws onto there, or priming it if you have to. You can suck out of there. Wouldn't recommend it, but that's an option. And then the fuel, pressurized fuel, goes under here, back up inside the carbs. Now that's the vacuum side. Now vacuum pumps require a vacuum to work. This pump's right here and flops the little diaphragm up and down. Most people on the ADV Rider forums think taking the intake out of one of these ports up here to balance the carbs is sufficient vacuum for the pump. Now it doesn't run on just vacuum, it runs on positive negative pressure, just a constant vacuum. It doesn't do anything. When you take one of these apart, and it's really easy with 4 screws, it has to, the little flapper in here that jumps up and down, and that's what pumps the fuel. So what it really needs is this pressure up and down pressure wave to work, and this at full throttle it's just going to have sort of a constant vacuum. A lot of people run that, have no problems whatsoever. But I prefer to do it the correct way, and that is off of the crankcase breather hose, which is up here, goes down. It's a newer model with the check valve. I don't think this will work without it. More of a restrictor. Then coming down here on the bike, here's where it comes out of the engine. Tucked right in here is a little, I believe, 1/2-inch piece of cast aluminum. I drilled and tapped and put a little hose barb sticking out and have a hose coming out of it. So the factory hose comes up through here, up all the way and into the airbox. This little tap piece right here has a little hose that comes up, pops up here, goes up, and goes in right here. And that's what keeps the fuel pump flapping around. Really quite simple. It's just a lot of hoses due to the space constraints of the bike. I've tried everywhere to put this pump. You put it here, you put it here, you put it up here. The fuel tank hits it. It's not an easy place to get at. And I choose up here on top because it's easy. You do the service in the field. You can take off the little glove box, 4 screws, pop it out. If there's any dirt in there, you can blow it out, clean it out relatively easy. Or put a rebuild kit in for $3, but I've literally had these pumps sit in old Odysseys and stuff for 10 years and then work perfectly fine when you fire them up again. So now for the stock pump, which is tucked still down here in its default location. Pressurized fuel comes up through here, up this crinkly zigzag line of hose. I really want to replace these with stainless hard line, but I haven't got to that yet. Might be a better situation, might not be, I'm not sure. Never have enough hose. Anyway, it comes up here, tucks up here again, and connects into this fitting. This pump has technically 2 outs. It can run a carburetor on this side, a carburetor on this side. So these are two are connected together. So it just blows through fuel right through the fuel pump. There's no check valve connecting these. It's connected to the same section in the pump, and then just sends it on its way down for this if I'm helping a friend out, or into the carburetor. Now there is no fuel filter on the electric pump side, but it has a fuel filter in the tank and never needed a fuel filter before, so it seemed to work fine. To run it, basically I've been running it this way for over a year with the vacuum fuel pump and have never had any problems, with the exception of I let it sit for a couple months, the carburetors dry up, and then I used the electric fuel pump to start it up. And that consists of just putting in the fuse. It's on the floor over there. But anyway, I usually leave the electric fuel pump out, fuse out most of the time. It'll actually sit right next to it in the blank spot, and another blank spot will just stay there nice and happy. And when you need an electric fuel pump, just take the fuse, put it in, turn it on, click, 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 click. Works flawlessly. Probably be really good for priming it if there's no fuel in the system. The other issue is everybody's like, well, why do you put it up here? You know, I've seen other kits with it down below. Well, there is various discussion about, because fuel can just flow pretty freely through this thing without much restriction. If on a hot day the tanks will expand, it'll flood the carburetors. Putting the fuel filter, the fuel pump on top, is what people say the fix for this. I've not tried it lower, but I have had the bike sitting in 100-degree heat in the sun with full tanks, nothing flooded whatsoever. I went outside, started it, started right up. And I've also had the bike on its side a bunch of times, no problems whatsoever. Like I said, the only other time I've had a problem was when the carburetors were dry. I cranked it, it wouldn't start. I figured instead of running the battery dead, I'll just pop the fuse in. Cycled the key a couple times, filled everything up, pulled the fuse out, and then it worked beautifully just with that. And that is pretty much it. Oh, this is bolted down, it's sealed pretty nicely down on here. It does hamper the removal of the air filter slightly, but get on there. Oh well. There's still enough clearance on there without removing too many screws that you can still get inside and get the air filter. That is not my air filter, that is a rag, so I don't drop stuff in there as my air filter's soaking up oil right now. So, it's a tight fit, but everything fits. The glove box fits. It seems to be happy right there. I haven't had any problems with it. And that is pretty much it. It seems like a pretty bulletproof system. If your vacuum pump has a problem, just put in your fuse. Electric pump kicks right in. You keep right on riding. Anything I would change? Like I said, hard lines would solve a lot of the plumbing hose issues. There's just hoses everywhere. Not that that's a totally bad thing. You can always use extra hoses, and I got some fittings in the back just in case something rips. I can always take a piece of hose out that I don't need somewhere, or reroute about the problem and get back on the road. But it is sort of a spaghetti nightmare going all over the place. And and let's see, if you're wondering about what this is your standard Desert Rat electrical system. You always hate when electrical problems you happen to have in the field, wires chafing, stuff like that. Usually use some EMT tubing or other tubing or fuel line. I got some fuel line running on the other side. That helps so the wires don't chafe on various components through here. You can't do much up in there, but down below you can see right through here too where these are actually where the throttle lines go, and any other cabling, so they don't chafe on the wires as they move around it here. So they slide inside of there, not have that piece slide around and chafe wiring. And that is pretty much it. So you can find these online, snowmobile shops, anything like that, and just hook it up, plumb it up, and go riding.